Hey guys, if you like this content, I would greatly appreciate it if you guys liked the video and subscribed to my channel. It helps make these videos worth it going forward.
What's up, guys? Altcoin Sherpa here with a crypto market review. As always, this is not financial advice. I am not an expert. Do your own research. Today, I just want to review Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum. We'll see. So let's just get to it. What have we seen the last few days? We've seen some nasty retraces. Bitcoin pretty much filled out the entire move from 35K to 45K, 46K, and it's pretty much retraced the entire move. High time frame context, this nothing has really changed in my opinion. Uh, we're still in a high time frame bearish market structure. You could maybe make some arguments that there is a trend change in the sense that if you denote this last 45K area as kind of like a high, or 44.6K, that's like a last high, then we did technically break above it on this last move up. With that said, the last low, either if you denote it at 32.8 or 33K, or even this low on lower time frame charts around 36K, we technically could still hit a higher low above that. And that would be one of the triggers for me thinking that there is a market structure shift to the upside, is if we hit some sort of higher low. So what I mean by that is if you denote um, like this is like the last low, high, higher high. I'll scroll in a little bit, make it a little easier. Um, and now we hit like a higher low. So we chop for a little bit. I don't know how long it's going to take. This to me would start to show that we hit a. I would start to consider a bullish market structure on this point, because we would hit a higher low and a higher high, and this would make me reconsider my overall high time frame bias. My high time frame bias right now is still bearish. I still believe that we need some sort of final shakeout before the lows can really get set on a macro scale, because macro scale lows, they take a really long time to form. As I have discussed in many of my previous videos, macro lows, they take a really long time to form, and you generally want to see a lot of volatility at some point, either at the start or near the end of it. So, for instance, from the May shakeout, we obviously saw tons of volatility right after, um, and then volume died down quite a bit. Sellers got exhausted, and then we obviously know what happens next: price pumped. Um, if you take, for example, this higher low in September, we saw like that big shakeout followed by lots of volatility right at the bottom, some high sell volume at late September, with some wicks into this demand area around $40,000, and obviously price went up again. So what I'm really looking for at this point is for price to start hammering some lows. I don't know what low it's going to be at: 33K, 35K. Um, could get wiped out all the way down to 28K. That's another possibility, of course. There's still like a lot of support down there, a lot of liquidity down there. Um, Entirely possible that it goes to that point, but I would like to see a high volatility, um, big shakeout where we see price go. I don't know where it's going to go to. Price usually likes to dip farther than we think it will, and then like tons of volatility followed by lots of wicks and ugly candle closes, similar to what we saw back in June. And at that point, that's when I'm starting to get closer to calling a macro bottom. But until we see that, I don't really know if the macro bottom is quite here. I will say that this overall downtrend in May looks quite a bit different than the one back in November to December. What we saw is that um, in May we saw like just this big shakeout where just everyone gets liquidated quickly and then price chops around. Here it's just like a more sustained higher lower high, higher lower low grind down. So the recovery period is going to likely look different than it did back in May. But with that said, I still believe that we need one final shakeout before um, the recovery is there. But I will say that my overall plan is to still watch to see where this low is set. It could be set right here. Um, it could be set here and then we hit a higher low. At that point, if we hit a higher low and then we break 46K, I think that I'm willing to consider changing my bias at that point. I'll take what the market gives me. But until that time, I just have bids set lower in like the low 30Ks because that's kind of the area that I was looking at to begin with. And I still think that anywhere from 28K to 30K kind of looks like an area that looks pretty good to buy, just like from high time frame support. I mean, if you look even on higher time frame charts like the weekly, this is a clear demand area in like the 28 to 30Ks. Um, and and I still think that that's like pretty good, like a pretty good first level. Like I think that people calling for something like 10, 15, 20K, I think it's still a little bit early to that for that personally. It is possible, of course, given macro conditions, but I still believe that it's a bit early to start calling for those levels, just because I think that there's still going to be support on the way down right at 28K, and I still do believe that something like 50K is possible. I did think we were going to hit it on this recent run, but I was incorrect on that. But for now, I still think that uh, I'm just personally waiting for the low 30Ks and high 20Ks. That's kind of my overall plan. But as I said, I am willing to change my bias if we start to look like we're printing some sort of higher low. Like, if price starts to like range here for the next like week or something, um, then that's when I'm starting to consider this being a higher low. But until that time, I'm not really convinced this is the macro low quite yet. Um, so yeah, my overall bias is still bearish in the short term. I still think that we need a final shakeout before we hit this macro low. I am willing to change my bias if we hit a higher low here, and it's absolutely confirmed in my opinion if we hit 46K or hit above 46K that in the short term we're at least going to the low mid 50s. That's like kind of my overall plan for Bitcoin. Let's take a look at Ethereum. Ethereum has looked it doesn't look that great, to be honest with you. On the weekly chart, I don't really see much support, to be frank and honest with you, until like 2K. That's kind of like an area of interest for me. Like lots of interaction with that 2K level. Um, and again, 2K is quite a long ways away, so you don't necessarily have to think about that level quite yet. But um, similar to Bitcoin, like if Bitcoin does shit the bed to like, I don't know, 28K, then 2K should almost certainly get hit, in my opinion. If you look for Ethereum still on the daily, this is still like a bearish market structure in my opinion. Um, but unlike Bitcoin, it didn't really break the recent highs. So for instance, like if you denote this last area as a high around like 34K, Ethereum never hit above that area. So that's pretty telling in my opinion that the market structure still is very clearly bearish for Ethereum because it hit a lower high, and then obviously I'm expecting at this point just to hit a lower low. Now, similarly to Bitcoin, if this does hit some sort of higher low, um, and then it breaks like the recent highs at 3,300, then I think that at that point I'm willing to consider changing my bias at that point. But to me, this is still a bearish market structure, and I still think that this, similar to Bitcoin, needs a final shakeout, maybe to like 2K or maybe a little lower before the recovery really starts to happen. So yeah, those are kind of my overall thoughts on Bitcoin right now. I still am kind of like high time frame bearish, but I am willing to change my bias, as I said before, for Bitcoin if a higher low gets printed around here, and then we obviously if we break the recent highs, then I think that's just pretty confirmed, at least in the short term, that we're going to, like, 50K. But until that time, I still am waiting for kind of a macro bottom to form with one final shakeout, and then we kind of see recovery after that. We could see some violence in March, and maybe like after the rate hikes, then I think that there's a lot more clarity after that situation. But I personally wouldn't really go super high conviction quite yet. Like usually when you see high conviction stuff, trade opportunities, that's when they're like it's always the scariest, and like the market is just like getting destroyed. That's when it's really time to go big size. But for right now, I'm still very uncertain. So, anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for the support.